Verstappen lost this race for an unbelievable reason.
The f***ing tyre.
But that's nothing compared to Hamilton, who almost lost his life after a car ran over him. These are the most unbelievable moments in Formula One, starting with Lewis Hamilton, who won a Grand Prix with just 3 wheels. The driver had the lead throughout the entire 2020 British Grand Prix until this happened.
Look how difficult it was to stop, but for Lewis Hamilton, the checkered flag will come in the nick of time.
On the final lap of the race, the car's front left tyre suddenly burst, and of course, panic started to set in. But instead of giving up, Hamilton kept control and crossed the finish line like a true champion.
For the most wins at home, it's Lewis Hamilton.
Another unbelievable moment happened with Max Verstappen in 2021 during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. He was leading comfortably when, out of nowhere, his rear tyre burst just 5 laps before the end.
Look at and that's Max Verstappen.
The saddest part was that the crash happened on the main straight, with the car at extremely high speed. Fortunately, he walked away unharmed, but of course, he wasn't happy about it at all.
The f***ing tyre.
But nothing compares to the 2019 German Grand Prix. On that day, the track felt more like an ice rink, with the rain causing absolute chaos. It almost looked like the cars were dancing in the middle of the track. Even Lewis Hamilton was struggling to drive in that rain.
And I think Lewis Hamilton's gone off as well, but he's carried on.
But that's when Sebastian Vettel saw an opportunity to shine and showed all his potential. Even though he started last, he managed to finish in 2nd place, putting on an amazing race. Oh, and Max Verstappen won the race.
Max Verstappen, the winner of the German Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel from 20th to 2nd.
But the real highlight was the pink car from Racing Point, driven by Lance Stroll, who even led the race for a while. What a twist. But that still doesn't top the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, when the World Championship was decided on the final lap. Hamilton was heading towards his 8th consecutive title, but a safety car intervention changed everything. Verstappen took advantage of the situation, fitted fresh tyres, and passed Hamilton on the final lap to win his first World Championship.
First overtaking zone is normally down into turn 5. Is Verstappen far enough back? He's going to make the lunge down the inside. Hamilton sees him coming. It's a late lunge by Verstappen, who takes the lead of the race. Verstappen now snatches the championship trophy from Lewis Hamilton.
To this day, that remains one of the most intense moments in Formula One. Now, nothing is as unbelievable as the day Lewis Hamilton pulled off a miracle. It almost sounds like a joke, but during the 2021 Brazilian Grand Prix, Hamilton was penalised and had to start from the last position in the sprint race. But, as if he had a superpower, he started overtaking car after car in an incredible way.
Exit Hamilton with a much better exit down to turn 4.
I said it's a 3rd time lucky. Hamilton pulls ahead of Verstappen. Before they get to the corner, the crowd go absolutely wild.
And the best part is that he still finished the main race as the winner, sending the entire grandstand wild.
Hamilton, against the odds, has come home to win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Now take a look at this race where Michael Schumacher showed why he's one of the greatest of all times. It all happened at the 1996 Spanish Grand Prix, and from the start, he was unbeatable. Even with the heavy rain, he was dominating the track. Just look at this incredible overtaking move.
It's fantastic for 2nd position, and this is lap 9 in the 65-lap race. He's been passed by Frentzen, he's been passed by Verstappen, and Schumacher goes through, passes Jean Alesi and moves up into 2nd place.
In the end, he won with more than 45 seconds ahead of the 2nd place finisher. That was his first victory with Ferrari, and to this day, it remains one of the most emotional moments of his career.
The last corner, and Michael Schumacher wins the Spanish Grand Prix after an absolutely superlative drive.
Meanwhile, Jenson Button had to do the impossible to win the race of his life. It all happened during the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, which is still considered one of the longest races in history. With over 4 hours of racing due to the rain, Button had to make 6 pit stops and even collided with his teammate, leading everyone to believe it was impossible for him to win.
Well, I think in that case, there's no question as we see a McLaren's touch. That is, Lewis Hamilton obviously with suspension damage, puncture.
But little by little, he managed to catch up to Sebastian Vettel and made an incredible overtaking move to secure the victory on the final lap.
I think Vettel's got wide.
Yeah,
he's got wide.
He turned in too late. He got the tyres. Button leads the Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel turned in with his tyres just touching the waters, the final lap of the Grand Prix.
But at the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix, only 3 cars crossed the finish line. It was a race full of crashes and retirements.
3.5 seconds behind, as there you see the Badoer holding everybody else off, and Villeneuve
Hangs into the 40 car of Luca Badoer. Badoer up in the air, well.
Even Schumacher couldn't escape.
down to 20 cars, and that's Schumacher! Michael Schumacher is out of the Monaco Grand Prix before the first lap has even been completed.
And he was furious when, out of nowhere, the car started to fail. But the most incredible part is that the driver who won that race was someone who, until that day, was practically unknown. Olivier Panis took advantage of the rain and dominated the track. This was the last win for the Ligier team and the only one in Panis's career.
Victory for Olivier Panis and Ligier that nobody could have expected in a Monaco Grand Prix.
Now let's take a look at a race that left all Formula One fans in disbelief. It all happened at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, where Renault did something unbelievable to win the race. On that day, Nelson Piquet Jr. was instructed to deliberately crash his car to trigger a safety car and benefit his teammate Fernando Alonso, who went on to win the race. The scandal known as Crashgate was only revealed the following year, tarnishing the reputation of the team. But at the 2012 European Grand Prix, something even more shocking happened. That's because this was one of the few seasons where the first 7 races had 7 different winners, with of course the highlights being Lewis Hamilton, Mark Webber, Jenson Button, Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, who were always fighting for the podium. Just hearing those names makes it clear that it was a highly competitive Grand Prix, but in the end it was the Spaniard who grabbed the most attention. Fernando Alonso simply had the race of his life in Valencia, making incredible overtakes and driving the crowd wild. But in the next race, Sebastian Vettel made an enemy within his own team due to a shocking mistake. Yes, we're talking about the famous multi-21 team order given by Red Bull at the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix.
Sebastian, multi-map 2-1, and look after your tyres, please.
On that day, Sebastian Vettel was about to overtake his teammate Mark Webber and receive the multi-21 order, which meant he should maintain his position and not pass him. But guess what? Vettel completely ignored the orders and left Webber eating his dust. It might have been exciting to watch, but off the track, the moment created huge tension within the team, to the point that it was the last year they both raced together for Red Bull. But it's impossible to talk about rivalries without mentioning the famous 1989 Japanese Grand Prix. In that race, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost were battling for the World Championship, and they ended up colliding at the chicane.
Oh my goodness, this is fantastic! This is what we were fearing might happen during the race. And that means to say that Prost has won the World Championship.
Prost retired from the race, but Senna continued and won. However, he was disqualified shortly after, and Prost took the title. The most bizarre part is that shortly after, they reversed the rule that disqualified Senna, meaning he should have been the champion. But the story didn't end there, because the rivalry between them was so intense that, the following year, Senna returned the kindness, and they had a big crash.
They are both off the racetrack. This is unbelievable.
But this time it was Senna who took the title. Then, at the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix, Felipe Massa lived one of the most emotional and painful moments in Formula One. He crossed the finish line as the race winner, and for a few seconds he was the world champion. What stood out the most was the reaction of his family in the grandstands, but on the last corner, Lewis Hamilton overtook Timo Glock and secured the points needed to snatch the title from Massa.
100,000 local hearts sink in the grandstands. It's handed the place back to Hamilton. He comes through, and I'm absolutely right, I'm sure.
To this day, what Felipe Massa said after that is truly heartbreaking.
I'm so proud of you anyway. I would have been even more with the championship, but anyway, thank you.
Now, this next race was as exciting as it was unbelievable. That was the day when Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were involved in a horrific crash.
It's wheel to wheel, Hamilton and Verstappen, and this time Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out, and they are both out.
It all happened at the 2021 Italian Grand Prix in Monza. The two were battling for the driver's title and position on the track when Verstappen attempted an ambitious overtake but ended up hitting Hamilton's car. In that moment, Verstappen literally drove over Hamilton's head. He only wasn't seriously injured because of the halo, that safety device. The curious thing is that when it was first introduced, everyone criticized the idea and didn't want to use it. But if it hadn't been for the halo that day, who knows what could have happened to Hamilton. Now check out this other moment in Baku, also in 2021. Max Verstappen was leading the race, and it seemed like victory was already secured until...
Look at... Oh! And that's Max Verstappen!
The rear tyre exploded and the car went straight into the wall. At that moment, everyone watching thought Verstappen's bad luck would be Hamilton's good fortune, as they were the two biggest names in the race. But they were wrong. Just take a look at what happened next.
He's tried to cut off Hamilton, who locks up and goes straight on!
Hamilton accidentally pressed the magic brake button and went straight off the track at the first corner. That cost him the race, and in the end, Sergio Perez won. What a crazy race! And speaking of crazy races, it's impossible not to include the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix on this list. After that crash, the restart was unforgettable. All the cars went to the pits to change tyres except for one, Lewis Hamilton. He was the only car on the grid, while the rest were coming out of the pit lane, creating a scene that looks straight out of a video game.
The rest of the field, otherwise he is going to lose out big time. It's going to be lights out and away we go for Lewis Hamilton only. The race leader is the only driver who's not come into the pit lane to change tyres.
But if we go back a little further, we have the 2019 Brazilian Grand Prix, which was simply unbelievable. First, the two Ferrari cars, Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, crashed into each other while fighting for position. And if that wasn't enough, Pierre Gasly, racing for Toro Rosso, now AlphaTauri, held on to second place in the final straight against none other than Lewis Hamilton.
By less than 1/10 of a second, and win his first podium in Formula One.
That was Gasly's first podium in Formula One, and of course his celebration was absolutely thrilling. Now check out this unbelievable moment from Sebastian Vettel at the 2017 Singapore Grand Prix. While leading, Vettel tried to defend his position at the start, but ended up colliding with his teammate Kimi Räikkönen and Max Verstappen. The result was that all three had to retire from the race, barely after it had even started. But what happened in this other race was tragic. The 2017 Canadian Grand Prix was the scene of one of the scariest crashes in Formula One. That day, Robert Kubica lost control of his car and crashed at over 186 miles per hour. The impact was so strong that the car completely disintegrated, and everyone thought he wouldn't make it out alive. But unbelievably, Kubica only suffered a twisted ankle and was back racing just a few weeks later. And speaking of unbelievable things, take a look at the 2005 Indianapolis Grand Prix, which is one of the biggest embarrassments in Formula One. That day, instead of 20 cars, there were only 6 at the start, all because of a mistake that nearly cost the lives of several drivers. It turns out that 7 of the teams were using Michelin tyres, and at the last minute they found out that all of them were defective. That's why all the teams decided to simply withdraw, creating one of the most bizarre moments in the sport's history. Another unbelievable moment happened with Nigel Mansell at the 1991 Canadian Grand Prix. Mansell was comfortably leading and started waving to the crowd on the final lap to celebrate his victory, until, to his surprise, the car's engine simply shut off and he lost the race. That's what happens when you celebrate too early.
Stopping! Nigel Mansell, just a few hundred yards from the flag on the last lap. He's stopping, he's banging his steering wheel in frustration. Something has happened. It looks as though he's out of the race.
And what about the 1982 Monaco Grand Prix? This race was totally crazy. In the final laps, the lead changed several times because the drivers were dropping out one by one. Alain Prost crashed. Riccardo Patrese spun out.
And he's lost it.
Didier Pironi ran out of fuel.
Pironi stationary. It is.
And Andrea De Cesaris stopped on the track. And to top off this madness, Riccardo Patrese came back and finished the race in first place.
Who could have said this? He's going to win the Monaco Grand Prix despite having spun off Riccardo Patrese.
But what happens when Formula One drivers lose control? There were even fights on the track. Click the screen and watch.